Welcome to Empathy Stories, where we bring you tales that inspire, transform, and remind us of the power of kindness and respect. Today, we share the story of James Carter, a man whose quiet dignity turned a moment of prejudice into a global movement for change. Stay with us, it's a story you won't forget. It was a crisp morning in New York City, and the streets were alive with their usual rhythm of hurried footsteps and distant car horns. Among the crowd of passers-by, James Carter walked unnoticed, dressed in a weathered leather jacket and jeans. His quiet demeanor blended seamlessly into the backdrop of the bustling city. James was no ordinary man, though. Known worldwide as a celebrated actor with an unassuming charm, he had managed to navigate the glitz of Hollywood while remaining firmly grounded. His humility was as legendary as his films. But today, his fame was irrelevant. James was on a personal mission. Over the past few months, James had been looking for a car, and not just any car, but something rare and meaningful. He wanted a vehicle he could restore, something he could use to raise funds for a cause close to his heart. That morning, he had set his sights on a luxury car dealership renowned for its collection of exclusive vehicles. It was said to be a place where only the wealthiest clientele dared to browse. A sanctuary of luxury and opulence. The dealership gleamed like a cathedral of affluence. Marble floors reflected the light of extravagant chandeliers, while rows of pristine cars sat on display, each a masterpiece of engineering and design. Employees in tailored suits moved about with an air of polished professionalism, their smiles reserved for those who fit the profile of their elite clientele. James entered quietly, his presence barely acknowledged as he walked through the showroom. His eyes fell on a car at the back of the room, a rare classic with sleek lines and a timeless elegance. It was precisely what he had been searching for. He approached it slowly, his fingers lightly brushing the bodywork as he took in every detail. There was a quiet reverence in his movements, as though he were admiring a piece of art. Nearby, a salesman stood idly, scrolling on his phone. James approached him with his signature politeness. "Excuse me," James said softly. "Could you tell me more about this model?" The salesman barely glanced up. With an indifferent shrug, he muttered, "Hang on. I'll get someone," and walked away without another word. James watched him leave, his expression calm but thoughtful. He turned back to the car, his admiration undeterred, though the air around him was beginning to shift. Employees whispered amongst themselves, casting sidelong glances in his direction. "Does he even know where he is?" one murmured. "Doesn't look like he's buying anything here," another added with a smirk. James heard them but chose not to react. Instead, he continued to study the car, immersing himself in its beauty. A few minutes later, the manager of the dealership, Robert, strode toward him. Robert's gait was stiff, his tailored suit exuding authority. His expression carried a mix of curiosity and disdain as he stopped a few steps away from James. "This model is exclusive," Robert said, his tone sharp. "Very rare." "That's exactly what I'm looking for," James replied evenly. Robert's eyes scanned James from head to toe, lingering on his faded jeans and scuffed boots. His lips curled into a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Well," Robert said, crossing his arms, "I hope you're ready. This car isn't for just anyone." James held his gaze, his calm demeanor unwavering. "I'm aware," he said. "Could you tell me more about it?" But Robert wasn't interested in discussing the car. Instead, he launched into a monologue about the exclusivity of their vehicles and the profile of the clientele they typically served. His tone grew increasingly condescending, each word dripping with sarcasm. James listened in silence, His patience tested, but his composure intact. Finally, Robert crossed the line. "Let me put it simply," he said, leaning closer. "People like you don't belong here." The air grew heavy. James tilted his head slightly, studying the man before him. Then, with a calm yet cutting tone, he replied, "Funny. I thought real luxury was treating people with respect. Maybe you should think about that." His words hung in the air like a challenge, and the entire showroom seemed to freeze. James turned and began to walk away, leaving behind a stunned silence. What Robert and the others didn't know was that this encounter was far from over. It was only the beginning of a story that would leave an indelible mark. The morning after James left the dealership, the world awoke to a storm brewing online. Unbeknownst to him at the time, a young man in the showroom had recorded the entire interaction on his phone. From the dismissive glances of the salesman to Robert's thinly veiled insults and James' poised yet powerful response, every moment had been captured. The video had been posted on social media later that evening with the caption, "Even James Carter gets disrespected, humility meets arrogance in this shocking encounter." Within hours, the video went viral, amassing millions of views. Comments flooded in from every corner of the globe. "How can anyone treat James Carter like this? He's the definition of class and humility. This manager deserves to be fired. It's 2025, judging someone by their appearance is shameful. James handled this with such grace. A true lesson for us all." The contrast between James' quiet dignity and Robert's condescension struck a chord with viewers. News outlets and entertainment blogs picked up the story, amplifying the public's outrage. James Carter wasn't just an actor, he was a global icon of humility. Someone who used his platform to promote kindness and equality. The idea that such a man could be treated so poorly stirred a deep sense of injustice. At the dealership, the fallout was immediate. By midday, their social media accounts were inundated with negative comments. Longtime clients announced they would no longer do business with them. Calls demanding an explanation flooded the dealership's phone lines. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Employees exchanged nervous glances. And Robert, once so confident, now paced in his office, his face pale. "We need to issue a statement," one employee suggested. Robert, his pride still intact, waved the idea away. "It's just a social media storm. It'll blow over." But it didn't. Instead, the storm grew stronger. More videos surfaced, shared by customers and former employees, detailing similar instances of Robert's behavior. He always judged people by how they looked, one employee revealed anonymously to a local news outlet. If someone didn't seem rich enough, he dismissed them outright. The dealership's reputation, once synonymous with luxury, now symbolized elitism and prejudice. Sales plummeted. Clients cancelled orders. The showroom, once bustling with activity, grew eerily quiet. Robert, now under pressure from the dealership's corporate headquarters, issued a public apology. "This was a misunderstanding," the statement read. "We deeply respect all of our customers and regret any offense caused to Mr. Carter. We strive to uphold the highest standards of service." But the damage was done. The public wasn't buying it. The apology felt hollow, a desperate attempt to salvage their image. Meanwhile, James remained silent. He had never been one to seek public validation or indulge in conflict. But his quiet composure only fueled the admiration of his fans. Online, his line from the video, "Respect doesn't cost a thing." But for some people, "It seems harder to find than any car in this place," became a viral mantra. Memes, quotes, and even hashtags like #RespectIsLuxury and #LearnFromJames spread like wildfire. Amidst the chaos, reporters swarmed outside the dealership, eager for a comment. Inside, Robert sat at his desk, the weight of his decisions bearing down on him. He could no longer escape the consequences of his arrogance. However, the real story wasn't about Robert's downfall. It was about the conversation that James had inadvertently ignited. Social media became a platform for people to share their own experiences of prejudice, discrimination, and judgment based on appearances. Businesses and influencers joined the dialogue, pledging to create more inclusive spaces. As for James, he spent the days after the incident quietly reflecting. To him, this wasn't about one manager or one dealership. It was about a larger issue, the value of respect and the importance of treating everyone with dignity, regardless of their appearance or status. One evening, as James sat in his modest apartment, a close friend called him. "James, have you seen this? The whole world is talking about you." James chuckled softly. "It's not about me," he replied. "It's about what we can learn from this." "But what are you going to do next?" his friend asked. James paused, his gaze falling on a photograph of his late father, a man who had taught him the importance of humility and kindness. "I think it's time I go back," he said. The friend's voice grew concerned. "Back to the dealership? Why?" James smiled faintly. "Because this isn't just a story about what happened. It's about what happens next." The world was watching, waiting to see how James would respond. Little did they know, his return would become the defining moment of this unfolding story, a moment that would transform the narrative from one of indignation to one of hope and redemption. A few days later, James Carter walked through the same glass doors of the dealership that had become infamous overnight. This time, his arrival was met with a hushed silence. Employees froze, their eyes darting nervously as they recognized the man who had become the center of a global conversation. The once bustling showroom was now subdued, reflecting the fallout from the public outrage. Robert, the dealership manager, stood behind the counter. His usual air of superiority was gone, replaced by a visible tension that seemed to weigh on his every move. He straightened his tie as James approached, his face pale. "Mr. Carter," Robert began, his voice hesitant and unsteady. I wanted to apologize again for how I treated you. It was a mistake, a misunderstanding. Really. I hope you can forgive me." James regarded him calmly, his expression unreadable. "Robert," he said, his voice steady but firm, "this isn't just about me. It's about how you treat everyone who walks through those doors. Do you understand that?" Robert nodded quickly, though the guilt in his eyes suggested he hadn't fully grasped the weight of James' words. "Of course. James raised a hand, gently cutting him off. "Let me finish," he said. "Respect isn't something you reserve for people you think deserve it. It's a basic human right. And if this dealership, or any business, can't understand that, it doesn't deserve the trust of its customers." The employees and a few remaining customers watched the exchange in stunned silence. James turned toward the car that had first caught his attention, the rare model that had sparked the entire incident. He ran his fingers over its sleek surface, the admiration in his eyes unchanged. But as he looked back at Robert, his decision was clear. "I came here looking for something special," James said, his voice carrying across the room. "But what I found was a place that values appearances over character. I won't be buying this car, or not from this dealership." Robert's face fell. But James didn't stop there. "I hope this serves as a lesson for you and everyone here. True luxury isn't found in a price tag or a brand. It's found in how we treat others." With those words, James turned and walked toward the exit. leaving a profound silence in his wake. His footsteps echoed in the showroom, a sound that felt like the closing of a chapter. But James' story didn't end there. Days later, he visited a modest dealership on the outskirts of Los Angeles. The owner, a middle-aged man named Sam, greeted him warmly, his handshake firm and his smile genuine. "Welcome," Sam said. "How can I help you today?" "I'm looking for something special," James replied. "A car that represents more than just luxury. I think you might have what I'm looking for." Sam led James through the small showroom, explaining the history of each car with enthusiasm and care. There were no judgments, no dismissive glances, just a genuine passion for his craft. James finally found a car that resonated with him, a model that carried the elegance and timelessness he had been searching for. Before leaving, James took a photo with Sam and his team, posting it on his social media with a simple caption, "True luxury is being treated with respect. Thank you for reminding me of that." The post went viral instantly, shifting the narrative once again. The modest dealership became a symbol of everything the original one had failed to embody: humility, kindness, and equality. Customers flocked to Sam's business, eager to support a place where dignity came first. Meanwhile, the original dealership faced irreparable damage. Robert was dismissed after mounting pressure from both the public and corporate headquarters. Despite attempts to rebrand, the business never recovered, becoming a cautionary tale in the luxury industry. But James' action sparked something far bigger than one dealership's downfall. His words and example ignited a global movement. Social media erupted with hashtags like #RespectIsLuxury and #DignityFirst, as people shared their own experiences of prejudice and discrimination. Businesses around the world pledged to rethink their practices, adopting more inclusive and respectful approaches to customer service. The car James purchased became a symbol of change. He restored it and later auctioned it off at a high-profile charity event, raising millions of dollars for initiatives that promoted equality and inclusion. During the event, James delivered a speech that would be remembered for years to come. "This car started as just an object," he said, addressing the audience with his signature humility. "But now it carries something far more valuable, the lesson that respect is not just a courtesy. It's a foundation for a better world. We all have the power to create change, no matter how small it may seem. And that change starts with how we treat each other." The applause that followed was thunderous, but James remained as composed as ever. For him, this wasn't about fame or accolades. It was about using his platform to make a difference, to turn a moment of indignity into a catalyst for transformation. As the weeks passed, the world moved on, but the lesson James had shared endured. People began to see the power in everyday kindness, in the simple but profound act of treating others with dignity. And for James, that was the greatest victory of all. In the end, he hadn't just walked away from that dealership, he had walked into a legacy of hope. One that reminded the world that respect truly doesn't cost a thing, but its impact is priceless. Thank you for joining us on this journey of empathy and transformation. If James' story resonated with you, let it serve as a reminder that respect is the foundation of meaningful connections and lasting change. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Empathy Stories for more heartwarming tales that inspire hope and compassion. See you next time.